IU and Lee Jong-suk caught on camera having dinner. Okay, so picture this. It's a regular weeknight in Seoul. Most people are just trying to get through their meal without someone recognizing them. But two of the biggest names in Korean entertainment, two people who have denied, dodged, and deflected every single question about their relationship for years, are spotted sitting across from each other at a private dinner. No huge entourage, no official schedule, just the two of them. And the internet? The internet absolutely lost its mind. We are talking about IU and Lee Jong-suk. And if you've been anywhere near the Korean entertainment rabbit hole recently, you already know why this dinner sighting has people completely spiraling. Because this isn't just two celebrities who happen to know each other. This is two people who have one of the most talked about, most analyzed, most obsessively documented alleged relationships in the history of Korean pop culture. And yet somehow, every single time the public thinks they've figured something out, the story gets more complicated, more layered, and honestly more fascinating than anyone expected. So let's actually get into it, because there is so much more to this than just a dinner. There is a timeline here that goes back years. There are moments that fans have been screenshotting and rewinding, and zooming in on since what feels like forever. And there is a very specific reason why this particular sighting, this particular dinner, hit differently than everything else that came before it. But before we get into the sighting itself, we need to go back, because you cannot understand why this moment matters without understanding the full picture of where these two people have been, how they got here, and why their names have been linked together in ways that go so much deeper than a tabloid rumor. IU, whose real name is Lee Jong-suk, is not just a celebrity in South Korea. She is an institution. She debuted when she was 15 years old, and what she has built since then is genuinely hard to put into words. Multiple generations of fans, chart records that have been broken, and then broken again, usually by her own songs, acting credits that critics consistently praise, a public image that feels both incredibly curated and somehow completely authentic at the same time. She is the kind of person that other celebrities admire openly and publicly, which in an industry where everyone is competing with everyone, says a great deal. She has won basically every major award South Korea has to offer across both music and acting. She has sold out arenas. She has starred in dramas that became cultural touchstones. And through all of it, she has maintained this very specific kind of presence, warm but private, approachable but guarded about the things that really matter to her personally. Her love life has always been the great unknown. There have been rumors over the years. There have been articles. There have been blurry photos. And IU has, for the most part, navigated all of it with a kind of grace that you only develop when you have been doing this since you were a teenager and you have learned, through sometimes very painful experience, exactly what you are willing to share with the world and what you are not. Lee Jong-suk on the other side of this equation is someone who came up through Korean entertainment on an absolutely different trajectory. He started modeling, transitioned to acting, and then proceeded to deliver a string of performances that made it very clear that this was not someone who was going to fade into the background. He has that rare combination of conventional attractiveness and genuine emotional range that makes him incredibly watchable in basically any context. His dramas have been massive hits. His fan base is enormous and deeply devoted. And he has this quality in interviews and public appearances where he seems both charming and slightly unpredictable. Like you never quite know what he's going to say next, which makes him genuinely compelling to follow. He has also been significantly more candid about his personal life than IU has been about hers, though candid in Lee Jong-suk's case often means dropping hints that feel deliberate and then immediately pivoting to something else entirely. He is the kind of person who seems to enjoy the tension of almost saying something and then not quite saying it. Now the history between these two. Let's actually map this out properly because the timeline is important. The first time their names were seriously linked together was not in the context of a romantic rumor. It was professional. Lee Jong-suk appeared in IU's music video for her song Ending Scene back in 2017, and something about the way they worked together, something about the chemistry that came through even in a relatively short video, made people pay attention. Music video collaborations happen all the time in Korean entertainment. Artists work together, directors pair them up, and usually that is the end of it. But something about this particular collaboration generated a level of conversation that did not go away. When the video stopped trending, people kept coming back to it. They kept analyzing the way they looked at each other. They kept pointing to specific frames. And the fan theories started, quietly at first, and then not quietly at all. Then came the period of years where they were seen in adjacent spaces. Award shows where they were photographed near each other. Industry events where their paths clearly crossed. mutual friends who mentioned both of them in the same breath. None of it was definitive. All of it added up to something that felt like the edges of a picture that people were desperate to see in full. And then in 2023, something happened that made the internet think the picture had finally come into focus. There were reports, widespread enough that they could not simply be dismissed as fringe speculation, that IU and Lee Jong-suk were in a relationship. The reporting was specific enough, sourced enough, that it got actual coverage from outlets that do not typically wade into pure gossip territory. And the fan reaction was, and I want to be honest about this, genuinely mixed in ways that were fascinating to watch unfold in real time. Some fans were thrilled. I knew it, I called it. Here is my compilation thread from 2018. Crowd came out in full force, and honestly, their receipts were impressive. There were people who had been archiving moments and connecting dots for years, and suddenly all of those threads that had seemed like wishful thinking had a different weight to them. The fan community has a word for this phenomenon. When a couple that people have been shipping for years turns out to be real, and the energy around it is very specific. It is triumphant and also slightly overwhelming, because suddenly speculation becomes something more complicated, because these are real people, not characters. Other fans responded differently. Some were protective of IU in ways that got intense. Some were simply sad, which is a real and human response even if it can look confusing from the outside. And some just wanted more information, more confirmation, more clarity than anyone involved was actually providing. Because here is what IU and Lee Jong-suk did not do. They did not confirm anything. They did not go on a public date. They did not make a statement. They did not do the thing that a lot of celebrities do when their relationship becomes public knowledge, which is find a controlled way to acknowledge it and then move on. They stayed quiet, both of them. Their agencies eventually released statements that managed to confirm almost nothing while also not technically denying anything, which is a very specific art form in Korean entertainment PR, and which left the internet in a state of collective interpretive chaos. And that silence, that careful, deliberate silence, became its own kind of story. Because when two people who are this famous and this skilled at managing their public personas both choose not to confirm and not to deny, what you are left with is a vacuum. And nature abhors a vacuum, and the internet definitely abhors a vacuum. So what fills that space is analysis. Constant, obsessive, incredibly detailed analysis. Every public appearance became data. Every interview answer got transcribed and examined for subtext. Every Instagram post, the timing, the content, the captions, what was tagged and what wasn't, got pulled apart. Fan accounts, dedicated to just this topic amassed. Followings of hundreds of thousands of people. Threads on community forums ran to thousands of comments. YouTube videos with titles very similar to the one that probably brought you to this video right now got millions of views, which tells you something about the scale of the interest in this particular story. And then, just as the noise around them was starting to reach a new kind of fever pitch, Lee Jong-suk went to the military, which in South Korea is not optional for male citizens, and which meant that the already limited public visibility of whatever was or was not happening between these two people essentially went to zero. He went in, and suddenly the conversation had to operate almost entirely in the past tense, or in the conditional tense, or in the deeply speculative tense that the internet has basically invented for situations like this one. During his time in the military, IU continued to work at the pace that IU always works at, which is relentlessly. New music, new acting projects, award seasons where she kept winning things. The industry kept moving and she moved with it. And in all of that activity, there were moments that people flagged, songs that seemed to carry a particular emotional weight. It kept the question alive. What is actually going on between these two people? Which brings us back to the dinner, which brings us back to that night in Seoul, and the report that sent fan communities into complete and total overdrive. Now here is what we actually know, and I want to be precise about this because in a story like this, the difference between what we know and what we think we know is incredibly important. There was a sighting. The details that came out described IU and Lee Jong-suk at a private dinner in a location that suggested this was not a coincidence, not a chance encounter at an industry event, but something that was arranged, something intentional. The report came with the kind of specificity that made it hard to dismiss. Not just they were seen somewhere, but details about the setting, the apparent nature of the meeting, the fact that it was private in the sense that they were clearly not seeking to be seen. When two people at this level of fame choose a dinner setting, they have options. They can do it in completely controlled environments where no one outside of their team would ever know. The fact that there was a sighting at all suggests either that they were not being quite as careful as they could have been, or that on some level the level of precaution they chose was deliberate. Both of those interpretations are interesting in different ways. Fan communities picked this up almost immediately, and the reaction was, predictably, enormous. But what was interesting, and what is worth paying attention to if you actually want to understand this story, rather than just react to it, was the quality of the analysis that followed. Because the people who have been tracking this situation for years are not just screaming into the void. Some of them have built genuinely sophisticated frameworks for understanding what public behavior means in the context of Korean celebrity culture, and they were applying those frameworks to this new information with a level of rigor that was honestly impressive. The argument that fans were making was not simply, they had dinner so they must be together. The argument was more nuanced than that. The argument was about what this dinner sighting, placed in the context of everything else that has happened over the past several years, suggests about where things stand. It was about reading this moment, not in isolation but as part of a longer pattern. And when you look at it that way, through that long lens, the picture starts to look a certain way. Think about the timing. Lee Jong-suk completed his military service relatively recently, and anyone who has followed Korean celebrities through military service knows that the period immediately following completion is a period of significant adjustment. People are figuring out who they are in the public eye again. They are re-establishing their professional identities. They are navigating the personal relationships that have existed in a very particular kind of suspended state during their service. The fact that a dinner between these two is happening in this specific window of time is not nothing. It is actually potentially quite a lot. Think about the nature of the setting. Private dinners between two people who are both at the absolute top of their industry. Think about what we know about how both of them communicate publicly about their personal lives. IU, as I mentioned, is famously private about this territory. She has spoken in interviews about the experience of having your personal life scrutinized, about the specific kind of vulnerability that comes with being a public person, who has feelings and relationships, like any other human being. She has talked about the importance of protecting certain things. So when IU is part of any situation that generates this kind of public visibility, even inadvertent visibility, that is information. That tells you something about how she is thinking about things. Lee Jong-suk, again, operates slightly differently. He has made comments over the years, in interviews, in social media posts, in the specific way that he answers questions, when he knows exactly what the questioner is really asking, that fans have cataloged extensively. There is a texture to how he talks about his personal life that is different from pure deflection. There is something almost playful about it, like he enjoys existing in the space between saying something and not saying it. Now I want to talk about what fans are actually reading as the huge relationship clue in this dinner sighting, because I think this is where the analysis gets genuinely interesting. The claim is not simply that they had dinner. The claim is that something about how this dinner was described, something about the details that came out, suggests a level of comfort and familiarity and mutual understanding that goes beyond what you would expect from two colleagues who are simply maintaining a professional relationship or a general industry friendship. There is language around these reports that fans are treating as significant. The way the setting was described, the apparent dynamic between the two people. These kinds of details, again, are being read not in isolation but against years of accumulated context. And when you do that reading, when you apply that context, the fan community is landing pretty firmly in one place, which is that whatever the formal status of the relationship between IU and Lee Jong-suk is, whatever either of them would say if directly asked on camera right now, what this dinner suggests is that the connection between them is real, and it is current, and it is something that both of them are choosing to maintain. Now, I want to be honest about the limitations here, because I think that matters. We are operating in a world of inference and interpretation. Neither IU nor Lee Jong-suk has said anything. Their agencies have not issued any statements about this sighting. We are working with information that is by definition incomplete, filtered through the specific lens of sources, who had reason to report this and may have their own biases and interests. That is the reality of following stories like this one. And I think it is worth acknowledging that there is something genuinely complex about the way fan culture engages with celebrity relationships. There is real affection driving it. There is real investment, sometimes spanning years. There is genuine excitement and genuine care. And there is also sometimes an intensity that can cross into territory that the celebrities themselves probably find difficult. The line between following someone's public life with interest and projecting onto them a story that serves your own emotional needs is not always clearly drawn, and it is worth thinking about where any given piece of analysis falls on that spectrum. What I can say is that the people who have been most serious and most careful in their analysis of this situation have generally been respectful of the fact that these are real people who get to make their own choices about what they share. The most thoughtful fan communities have drawn a distinction between analyzing what is publicly visible and demanding access to what is private. And in the context of the dinner sighting, the analysis has largely stayed on the right side of that line. The conversation has been about what this means, not about pressuring either person to say something they haven't chosen to say. But let's talk about what this means culturally, because I think that dimension of the story is often under-discussed. And it is actually fascinating. IU and Lee Jong-suk are not just two famous people. They are both, in different ways, emblematic of specific things about Korean entertainment and Korean celebrity culture that go beyond their individual careers. Subscribe for more of IU and Lee Jong-suk.